Hi everyone, myself Dr. Yogesh, Professor and HOD from the Department of Oral Pathology and Microbiology, Sri Rajiv Gandhi College of Dental Sciences and Hospital, Bangalore. Today I am going to talk about odontogenic cysts. As all of you are aware, odontogenic cysts is an important pathology in the head and neck area. These cysts can occur anywhere in the body, but the cyst which arises from the odontogenic apparatus, that is, the structures which are involved in the development of the tooth, are called as odontogenic cysts. And the epithelial sources which give rise to other cysts, that is, other than the odontogenic epithelium, are called non-odontogenic cysts. In this session, I am going to cover the introduction part, definition of a cyst, what are the various types of cysts, parts of a cyst, the pathogenesis involved, that is the initiation and expansion of a cyst, how it happens, and the various classifications, and an important developmental cyst, that is the dentigerous cyst. So as I said earlier, this diagram indicates the cysts which are derived from the odontogenic apparatus. As you can see, the dental lamina, the bud stage, cap stage, bell stage, late bell stage, and the erupted tooth which is covered by the reduced enamel epithelium, the dental lamina and its remnants which are called as cell rests of Serres, and the structures involved in the root formation, that is the Hertwig's epithelial root, and its remnants called as cell rests of Malaise, all are involved in the development of odontogenic cysts. So, how do you define cyst? The definition of cyst, literal meaning is called sac or a bladder. Killy and Kay in 1966 has defined it as an epithelial lined sac filled with the fluid or semi-fluid material. Kramer in 1974, he defines it as a pathological cavity having fluid, semi-fluid or gaseous content which is not created by the accumulation of pus. Further added, Shear has given an final definition that says it's a pathological cavity having fluid, semi-fluid or gaseous content which may or may not be lined by epithelium, and it is not created by the accumulation of pus. So whenever there is an accumulation of pus, we call it as an abscess. So what are the parts of a cyst? So the three main parts of a cyst are the lumen. This is the lumen which contains either fluid or semi-fluid or gaseous content within it. Fluid content, as you can see in some of the cysts like dentigerous cyst, radicular cyst, residual cyst, etc. We call it as sometimes a chocolate color fluid depending on their color. Semi-fluid, as you see in odontogenic keratocyst, the lumen will be filled with keratin, a cheesy material. So surrounding the lumen, there will be a typical epithelial lining. So in odontogenic cysts, these lining epithelium is derived from the odontogenic apparatus. It can be any source that we will discuss in the coming slides. What are the various sources of epithelium for each cyst? So the epithelial lining will be resting on the capsular wall. This is the capsule, connective tissue capsule we call it as. So what are the main types of cysts are the true cyst and the pseudocyst. A true cyst is the one which is lined by epithelium. As you can see here, lumen, there is epithelial lining. This is a true cyst. And a pseudocyst is not lined by epithelium. For example, you have aneurysmal bone cyst, solitary bone cyst are the example for the pseudocyst. Reichert and Philipson has referred these cysts as cavities rather than the cysts. So general consideration of the cyst, These cysts in the head and neck area, they can occur either within the soft tissue or in the hard tissue. Most of the time, few cysts, example like odontogenic keratocyst, they may be asymptomatic until unless it is examined accidentally, the patient is taken X-ray for some other purpose. Okay? But many other cysts are symptomatic, which are associated with pain and swelling. Especially radicular cyst, which is one of the inflammatory cyst. So they are usually slow growing and they are expansile in nature. So generally, most of the cyst shows buccal cortical plate expansion. I am talking about the maxilla and mandible because these odontogenic cysts are confined to the maxilla and mandible. So they are usually buccally expansile lesion. Why? Because the lingual cortical plate will be more dense compared to the buccal cortical plate and they offer more resistance. The lingual cortical plate offers more resistance for the lingual expansion. That's why the buccal cortical plate expansion is most common. Lingual cortical plate expansion can be seen in any cyst and tumor if the associated tooth, the involved tooth is lingually oriented. Okay? So they usually grow by the expansion, especially buccal cortical plate expansion than the lingual cortical plate expansion. Radiographically, most of the cysts appears as a radiolucent lesion, maybe unilocular or multilocular depending on the type, surrounded by a thin radio-opaque border. We call it as sclerotic border. So what is the main pathogenesis involved in the cyst? The main three pathogenesis are the cyst initiation, cyst formation and cyst enlargement or expansion of the cyst. In this diagrammatic picture, you can see this is one of the explanation typically holds true in case of radicular cyst, where the epithelial rest, we call it as the cell rest of Malassez, for example, or it could be cell rest of Serres. Imagine this is a cell rest of Malassez, which are the remnants of the Hartwig's epithelial root sheath, which helps in the formation of the root during the tooth development, during the odontogenesis. So whenever there is inflammation, for example, any periapical or the periodontal infection, these cell rests of Malassez will get stimulated. Various cytokines takes part. There will be proliferation of the cells happening. It looks like a morula and blastula during the embryo. Okay? So as the cells proliferate, the central cells undergo hypoxia. They will be deprived of the nourishment. These central cells, as they undergo decreased blood supply, the cells undergo degeneration. The surrounding cells will now expand further. As you can see, the cells expand further and the central cells undergo more and more degeneration. The cytokines will be still acting further, which helps in the further expansion of the cyst. Apart from this, there will be osmosis happens. Whenever the cyst is expanding, there will be difference in the osmotic pressure within the cystic lumen and from the surrounding tissue. So there will be influx of the fluid happens, which further expands, and further the cyst will show more and more expansion. Okay? So this cyst enlargement is explained how? Because there will be increase in the volume of the cyst, there will be increase in the surface area of the cystic cavity, there will be displacement of the surrounding soft tissues. Meantime, there will be resorption of the surrounding bone. These are the various concepts how the cyst will be enlarged. So various theories has been put forward, which is given by Harris. Mural growth theory, hydrostatic enlargement theory, and bone resorption factor. Mural growth, in this we have peripheral cell division and accumulation of cellular contents. In the hydrostatic enlargement, we have secretion, transudation and exudation, and dialysis. And the last is the bone resorption factor, which is mainly comes from the inflammatory cysts and the inflammatory products. So in the mural growth, as you can see in the picture, there will be the first theory. These true mechanism holds true in case of odontogenic keratocyst. Peripheral cell division. So you can see the enlargement of the cyst at the periphery due to the active division of the cells of the epithelial lining the cyst. In accumulation of cellular content, there will be a finger-like projections. This can project especially in the medullary cavities of the bone, which helps in the further expansion of the cyst. Second is the hydrostatic enlargement. In this I told you three mechanisms. One is the secretion. What is this secretion is? For example, in case of dentigerous cyst, the lining of dentigerous cyst has the ability to undergo metaplasia. As it undergoes metaplasia into either goblet cells or mucous cells, these mucous cells and goblet cells secretes their secretion into the lumen, which further increases the osmotic pressure and helps in the expansion. Then transudation and exudation. Transudation is a non-inflammatory fluid and exudation is the inflammatory fluid. And the dialysis. Why this dialysis happens? As the cyst is enlarging, there will be difference in the osmotic pressure from the cystic lumen to that of the surrounding tissue. More and more fluid will be drawn. How the fluid is drawn? It happens mainly through the epithelial discontinuities. Epithelial discontinuities which are present in the cystic lining. Last is the bone resorption factor. This holds true mainly in case of inflammatory cyst like radicular cyst, residual cyst, paradental cyst. So the inflammatory products, mainly prostaglandin, PGE2, E3, they all helps in the resorption of the surrounding bone. The osteoclast takes part in resorption of the bone. Once the bone is resorbed, it helps in the central cysts which are present in the jawbone to expand further and further. So the cyst expansion happens mainly by the bone resorption, especially holds true in case of inflammatory cysts. So as I said, the main sources of epithelium includes the basal layer of oral epithelium, especially in case of odontogenic keratocyst, dental lamina, cell rests of Serres, which are the remnants of dental lamina, enamel organ or dental organ, reduced enamel epithelium. This reduced enamel epithelium is seen once the crown formation is completed and which covers the unerupted enamel. And the last is the cell rests of Malassez, which are the remnants of Hartwig's epithelial root sheath. So various classifications in the cyst we will talk only about the important classification given by Scheer, accepted by WHO. The cyst of the jaw is divided mainly into epithelial lined cyst and non-epithelial lined cyst. In the epithelial lined cyst, we have developmental and inflammatory. Okay, so now I am talking about the epithelial lined cyst, which is the developmental and inflammatory. In the developmental, again we have odontogenic and non-odontogenic. So as I said earlier, odontogenic means these are the cysts which arises from the odontogenic apparatus and its tissue of origin. Non-odontogenic means they are not involved in the tooth development. The inflammatory cysts are the radicular cyst, residual cyst, paradental cyst. In the odontogenic developmental cyst, the important cyst will be dentigerous cyst, odontogenic keratocyst, calcifying odontogenic cyst, eruption cyst, botryoid odontogenic cyst. Okay. So next come to the non-epithelial lined cyst. We have solitary bone cyst and aneurysmal bone cyst, ABC and SBC. These are non-epithelial lined cysts which occur in the jawbone. Which are the cysts associated with maxillary antrum, the maxillary sinus? They are the mucocele, retention cyst, pseudocyst and postoperative cyst of maxillary sinus. And the cysts which are associated with the soft tissue of the mouth, face and neck includes the dermoid and epidermoid cyst, lymphoepithelial cyst, thyroglossal duct cyst, anterior median lingual cyst, the cyst associated with the intestinal and gastric epithelia, cystic hygroma, nasopharyngeal cyst, thymic cyst, The cyst of the salivary gland, which are the mucus retention cyst, extravasation cyst, ranula, polycystic disease of the parotid. And lastly, important, we have the parasitic cyst. They are the hydatid cyst, which includes cysticercus cellulose and trichinosis. So there is another classification given by the Schaefer. This is based on the cell of origin. The cyst which derived from the res of Malassez includes periapical cyst and the residual cyst, which is otherwise called as a root end cyst or apical periodontal cyst. And the cysts which are derived from the dental lamina includes mainly odontogenic keratocyst. Unclassified cysts are the paradental and COC. And the cysts which are derived from reduced enamel epithelium are mainly dentigerous cyst and eruption cyst. Based on the frequency of distribution, this is the bar graph showing the maximum number of cysts which occurs in the jaw. The most common cyst of the jaw is the radicular cyst, as you can see here. So, the most common cyst in the jaw is, remember, it's a radicular cyst, followed by dentigerous cyst, odontogenic keratocyst, residual cyst, paradental cyst, and unclassified odontogenic cyst. So, the radicular cyst is an inflammatory cyst which is the most common cyst of the jaw. Among the developmental odontogenic cysts, this dentigerous cyst will be the most common. Okay. So, next come to the important developmental odontogenic cyst. Nothing but your dentigerous cyst or the follicular cyst. The name is so given because this cyst is always attached to the CEJ, that is cemento-enamel junction or neck of the tooth, always attached. That's why it is called dentigerous cyst. As you can see in the picture, the cyst is always attached to the neck of the tooth. This is the most common odontogenic cyst, and it is associated most commonly with the impacted tooth or unerupted tooth. Since the mandibular third molars are the most commonly impacted tooth, so we see dentigerous cyst association with most commonly with the mandibular third molar, followed by maxillary canine, mandibular premolar, maxillary third molar. This is the frequency of occurrence. And the deciduous tooth, it is rarely involved. Most commonly involves the dominant tooth. So, the dentigerous cyst, when it involves the mandibular third molar, the buccal cortical plate expansion involving the angle ramus region is commonly noted. The most common age is the second and third decade of life, and then with the male peridolic. So, as you can see in the picture, an impacted tooth which is associated with the swelling of the palate, there will be obliteration of the buccal vestibule. If the buccal vestibule gets infected either due to any trauma or any other source, there will be infected dentigerous cyst. So, the developmental cyst will show the features of an inflamed dentigerous cyst. Okay? So, they are usually painless until unless they are infected. They grow to a large size before they are diagnosed. There will be expansion of the bone, there will be facial asymmetry, root resorption can happen, there will be divergence of the root, separation of the root. This is the radiographic picture of the same clinical photo. You can see the dentigerous cyst associated with the impacted tooth, and here also one impacted mandibular second premolar, which is causing divergence of the first premolar. These radicular, the radiographic features are the unilocular radiolucency surrounded by a sclerotic margin, and it is always attached to the neck of the tooth. This is the classical radiographic identification point, dentigerous cyst. So, there are three main variants of dentigerous cyst: central variety, lateral variety, and the circumferential. Whatever the variety, you can observe here, the cyst lining will be attached to the CEJ only. it is attached at the level of cemento-enamel junction. In the central variety, the tooth will be exactly in the center. The cyst occupies. This can push the tooth to different position. Sometimes a mandibular impacted tooth associated with the dentigerous cyst can go till the ramus, till the angle of the mandible. Okay. So here lateral variety, the cyst comes to occupy one of the lateral aspect of the root. That's why we call lateral. Circumferential, we can see completely it envelops an impacted tooth. It is completely enveloping the impacted tooth. So how to distinguish a small dentigerous cyst from the large dental follicle? So normal perifollicular space will be 3 to 4 millimeter. So dentigerous cyst should be suspected if it is more than 5 millimeter in the radiograph. Many IHC markers like apoptotic related factors and proliferative markers are also used to differentiate the dental follicle from the dentigerous cyst. Pathogenesis, how the dentigerous cyst formation and expansion happens. There are two theories has been put forward. The first is the extrafollicular theory. Here, as you can see in the picture, there will be accumulation of the fluid between the reduced enamel epithelium. This is the reduced enamel epithelium. What is reduced enamel epithelium? This is made up of post-functional ameloblast, stellate reticulum cells and the outer enamel epithelial cells. These are the 3 to 4 layers of cells which covers the unerupted tooth. So in the extrafollicular theory, there will be accumulation of fluid between this reduced enamel epithelium and the tooth surface. So this is the cystic fluid happening here. This can also happen sometimes extrafollicularly by the eruption of an impacted tooth into the radicular cyst which is associated with the deciduous tooth. This tooth can directly erupt, so this can attach to the impacted tooth. So this is called extrafollicular origin of dental cyst. In the intrafollicular theory, there will be accumulation of the fluid between the layers of the reduced enamel epithelium, that is between your inner enamel epithelium and the outer enamel epithelial cells. Okay, this is one of the main cause in intrafollicular origin. Second, during the development of tooth itself, the tooth bud may completely degenerate. So this is called early cystic degeneration of the stellate reticulum. So this is the intrafollicular origin. So two theories to explain are the extrafollicular and intrafollicular origin in dentigerous cyst. So histopathology, of course, biopsy and histopathology always gives the final diagnosis of dentigerous cyst. So a classical dentigerous cyst, when you excise, it shows 3 to 4 layers of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. 3 to 4 layers of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium without retapec formation. Most of the time it will have a flat interface between the capsular wall, and the capsular wall shows young fibroblast and the immature stroma. And most of the time, as I said earlier, dentigerous cyst lining can show metaplasia into either ciliated columnar, especially in a maxillary cyst, the cysts which are associated with the maxillary canine and the molars. And also it shows metaplasia into goblet cells and the mucous cells. These goblet cells and mucous cells, this is what one of the theory of cyst enlargement, I told you. The secretion part takes place here. The secretion from these cells again further added to the cystic lumen and the cyst expands further. So these are some of the epithelial lining changes commonly seen in dentigerous cyst. Rushton bodies is another findings we see in the dentigerous cyst. What are Rushton bodies? These are the peculiar curved hyaline bodies with different staining capacity. They are hairpin-like structures. These are, you can see here in the lining of dentigerous cyst and eosinophilic homogeneous structures. They are curved like hairpin-like structures. So what is the source of these Rushton bodies is either they are keratin-like product or they are derived from the RBC, hematogenous origin. Some authors say it is a secretory product of odontogenic epithelium. These are the sources for the Rushton bodies. Apart from dentigerous cyst, these Rushton bodies are also seen in the radicular cyst, residual cyst, sometimes in inflamed OKC and sometimes in ameloblastoma also. So these Rushton bodies are not pathognomonic. Okay. So apart from the Rushton bodies, the islands of the connective tissue capsule shows some epithelialness, and the islands, these are derived from the odontogenic apparatus. So this is the high power view, and the another picture showing the Rushton bodies in the epithelial lining, homogeneous eosinophilic structures you can see in the epithelial lining of dentigerous cyst. So this picture shows an inflamed dentigerous cyst. As I said, due to any trauma or infection, the normal developmental dentigerous cyst may get infected. Then we use the term inflamed dentigerous cyst, which shows a thick epithelial lining. As you can see, the classical features will be lost here. The 3 to 4 layers, non-keratinization, everything will be lost. There will be formation of the retapec, which was not there in the classical developmental dentigerous cyst. And apart from that, you will see numerous inflammatory infiltrate in the capsular stroma. Syndromes which are associated with dentigerous cyst include cleidocranial dysplasia, multiple basal cell nevus syndrome, amelogenesis imperfecta, and Maroteaux-Lamy syndrome. These are the important syndromes associated with dentigerous. If you leave the dentigerous cyst like that without any surgical exploration, without any intervention, what are the possible complications? The possible complications includes ameloblastoma, especially unicystic ameloblastoma. Second, mucoepidermoid carcinoma, because already mentioned, the lining cells can undergo metaplasia into mucous cells and goblet cells, which can give rise to mucoepidermoid carcinoma. Then the lining can give rise to squamous cell carcinoma or the epidermoid carcinoma, and the formation of primary intraosseous carcinoma. So these are the potential complications of dentigerous cyst, a long-standing dentigerous cyst. So the various differential diagnosis includes odontogenic keratocyst, unicystic ameloblastoma. These are the radiographic differential diagnosis, and an enlarged follicle sometimes. So the treatment and the prognosis wise, most of the time surgical intervention is required. If the cyst is very large, we do a procedure called marsupialization, where the roof of the cyst will be opened, the cystic pressure will be decreased, and we will remove or we will enucleate the cyst later. Why it is done is because if we attempt to enucleate a large cyst, there can be chances of pathologic fracture of the mandible. So we avoid complete enucleation in one shot for a large cyst. But otherwise, the small cyst can be easily enucleated, and the recurrence of this cyst is very rare. Thank you.